Joining me right now, we have former Commanding General of U.S. Army Europe, retired Army Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. He is now an MS now, but now you are military analyst. Thank you, General, for being here. So, Iran claims it has once again closed the Strait of Hormuz, and they will not move forward with peace talks until Israel halts attacks in Lebanon. There are reports that U.S. intelligence does not expect Israel to stop. So how does this threaten a final agreement to end the war? And was the Trump administration unprepared for the Israel-Hezbollah dilemma playing out right now?
Wow, that's a lot of questions there. But let me start off by also complimenting David Rhodes. He's been on top of this from the very beginning, and I'm agreeing with everything he said, and I'll emphasize a couple of things. First of all, I think we ought to reframe what's being discussed. The MOU that people are going to discuss in Europe is not a peace treaty. It's a framework that buys time for further detailed agreement. And we can't even get to that. We can't even get to the table to talk about what we're going to talk about.
General, I'm going to jump in and just say, I still remember the way you described it on the show last weekend. You said it was almost like an agenda at a business meeting. And I thought about that and I said, spot on.
Yeah, well, it is less an agreement than it is a bridge that leads to somewhere. And right now, we don't know where that bridge is leading because people can't get together on the ground. The second thing that you asked, Alex, I'll try and answer. The greatest threat to this, to meeting, to have Vice President Vance go and meet with Iranians and the Pakistanis is not Washington or Tehran and what they're talking about. It's what's happening in Lebanon, because the Iranians made it perfectly clear that they would talk to the U.S. if Israel stopped striking Hezbollah in Lebanon. This morning, Israel struck again and allegedly killed 16 deaths during a strike today. So, Israel is doing what they're going to do because they see Hezbollah as an existential threat in their north. So that is going to be a continued thorn in the side of anything happening next. The diplomats may all be trying to end a war and begin the negotiation process, but military operations continue to occur. The third thing I'd say is we don't know what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz right now. There are 3 lanes of ships moving through or not moving through. The CENTCOM press office may be saying they are moving through the southern axis to get ships out. But truthfully, when you look at the trackers of ships going through the straits, it's not that many. So when Vice President Vance says we're getting massive amounts of ships out and as you just said, a new record of barrels of oil, that's just not happening. It's not what is occurring on, I would say normally as an Army guy, on the ground, but in this case, it's on the water. In addition to that, we continue to see the president taunt and insult Iranian leaders on Truth Social. That's not helping the situation, because public taunts, when you're trying to establish a diplomatic approach, aren't going to either deter an adversary from doing something, pressure an adversary, or negotiate with an adversary. So all of these things they may be playing well politically at home, but it's certainly creating complications in terms of a negotiation process.
So let's go back to the Israel-Lebanon situation, because I'm curious how much Iran could help to rein in Hezbollah, their proxy. I had Congressman Adam Smith, who is the ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee, and he earlier said definitively that it is Hezbollah that is launching the attacks on Israel, and Israel responds. Sure, an argument can be made that Israel responds over forcefully. Fine. That said, if they are just responding to Hezbollah, why doesn't Iran say to Hezbollah, cut it out?
That's, I think a lot of people in the United States will think, hey, Hezbollah is just a proxy and it does everything the IRGC or the Iranian government tells it to do. It is not. It is much more complex than that. Hezbollah is not controlled. They are allied with Iran, but they are not controlled by Iran. Neither are the other proxy elements. They will do things on their own. And again, if you study what Hezbollah consists of, there at one time was estimated between 500,000 and 700,000 fighters. It had an extreme influence on the government of Lebanon. It would do things on its own, and certainly it would reinforce some of the things Iran is doing, but it's not controlled by the Iranian government. So it's easy to say, hey, Iran should tell them to stop, but they are fighting for their corner of the world as well. So it's just not that simple.
Well, we do know at least 3,500 Iranians have been killed in the conflict, including at least 175 people, most of them children. That happened during the strike on an Iranian school. It was on the very first day of the war. 13 U.S. service members have been killed. So let's listen to what Trump said yesterday when asked about the limits of his power in the wake of this war.
What have you learned about not just the exercise of power, but the limits on your power as a result of the conflict?
There are no limits.
No.
I haven't learned that lesson yet. I know there are, but, there are no limits. We defeated them totally militarily.
Sir, what is your response to the president saying he hasn't learned any lessons and is not in any way humbled after launching a war and not achieving his stated goals?
Yeah, this gets into a deeper discussion, Alex, and I'll say this. That number that you just mentioned of 3,300 Iranians being killed, that's about the same number of Americans that were killed on 9/11. And al-Qaeda believed they had extreme power and they would continue to conduct activities, terrorist activities, against the United States. If we switch positions with Iran, and I'm not saying we should do that, but they have been attacked. They have seen treaties torn up by the U.S. administration. So there is a lack of trust there. I would disagree with the president that he holds all the power, because as we've seen, what we're seeing in Iran right now is the epitome of asymmetric warfare. I'll have a piece out on this tomorrow in the Bulwark, but it describes exactly what asymmetric warfare is. It's more than terrorist activity. It's more than flying a plane into a building in New York or at the Pentagon. It is actually using advantages against an opponent's strength. And that is what Iran is doing right now. They are using economic advantages that we can't counter by more Navy strikes or more air strikes. And it doesn't matter that the Iranian IRGC Navy is at the bottom of the Arab Gulf, because they still have power to stop the flow of oil by threatening various shipping, as David Rowe just said a minute ago. That is an asymmetric threat, and we're trying to counter it, and it's not countered by destroying their military.
I have my Sunday morning reading assignment. Thank you so much, General. It's good to see you.